Synlab Laboratory Services, part of Synlab Group, and predominantly a provider of medical diagnostics services, acquired Synergy Health Laboratory Services, SHLS, whose core business was workplace drug and alcohol testing services. SHLS had held accreditation for toxicology testing, and in 2018 Synlab attained accreditation for the analysis of drugs driving toxicology testing for blood specimens under S5A. Synlab had not previously undertaken drugs driving analysis within the CJS, although SHLS had briefly held accreditation for 2 drugs for S5A analysis in 2016. In December 2018, Synlab were granted accreditation for S5A analysis for a wider range of drugs. Live casework analysis was initiated in April 2019. In June 2019, UKAS undertook an assessment of Synlab and found evidence that the processes for the analysis of duplicates and management of quality control samples were not being fully implemented. At this stage, there were limited quality control samples available. As a result, Synlab voluntarily suspended its accreditation for the analysis of specified drugs for S5A analysis while it dealt with the findings of the assessment and sought to clear the findings raised by UKAS. In August 2019, Key instructed an independent consultant to audit Synlab's methods, due to persistent concerns Key held. While no casework was being undertaken at the time of the audit, the independent consultant found that Synlab's methods were theoretically fit for purpose and valid, with recommendations for a revisit once the methods had been transferred to newer instrumentation. Synlab's accreditation was reinstated in August 2019 following further UKAS assessment, and S5A analysis recommenced with a reduced scope of accreditation. Concerns were raised in November 2020 by an expert acting for the defense in a case analyzed by Synlab in early June 2020. As a result of investigations by Key and Synlab voluntarily suspended their accreditation and the undertaking of live casework. The regulator was formally notified on the 16th of December 2020. It is not possible to establish whether, had the UKAS assessment in July 2020 been on site, it would have picked up on the issues that were revealed through the defense review. In this context, the accreditation and assessment process did not adequately detect significant quality issues. It is acknowledged that the UKAS assessment and accreditation process was not designed to specifically look at risk to the CJS. Following the voluntary suspension, UKAS undertook multiple visits and assessments of Synlab to try to resolve issues. Between January and August 2021, UKAS issued several assessment reports. 4 of these were remote assessments. UKAS recommended reinstatement of Synlab's accreditation, subject to Synlab clearing mandatory actions. The suspension of accreditation by UKAS continued through to January 2023, when UKAS accreditation was withdrawn retroactively for the entire period that Synlab had been operational for S5A analysis. The scientific review by the independent advisor exposed the extent of the quality issues, but the trigger for the exploration into the extent of the issues at Synlab was the scrutiny by a defense scientist as opposed to through the UKAS accreditation assessment process or the initial referral to the regulator. This argues for better and more robust mechanisms to communicate significant risks of quality failures between UKAS and the regulator so that the regulator can take actions appropriately. Lessons learnt relating to accreditation and regulatory processes. The initial period of suspension in 2019 should have warranted additional scrutiny even when accreditation was reinstated, given the lack of experience of Synlab both in S5A analysis and providing forensic science evidence to the CJS. UKAS has conducted its own lessons learnt review and implemented a 3-month review requirement for such circumstances. The regulator should establish formal arrangements with UKAS such that if there is a suspension, voluntary or otherwise, of accreditation, this is notified to the regulator so an assessment of the impact of this suspension can be made. This would allow effective application of the new statutory powers under provisions of the FSR Act. The regulator should assess the level of risk and consider whether to use the powers under Section 6 of the Act and issue a compliance notice to manage and mitigate any risks to the CJS.